Thank you, councillors. Thank you, staff members, and thank you, members of the public, those who are joining us here and online. This is our agenda briefing session. For those who haven't joined us in these before, most of you have, but this is an opportunity for elected members to ask questions of staff of our agenda before next week, where decision-making processes will happen. Before we do get started, I have had a request from Councillor Gassab to join electronically. I declined that request as I don't think it met our council policy. He has requested that council consider that. Those in favour of Councillor Gassab joining the meeting, please indicate. Okay, that's not approved. Thank you. We do have Councillor Steele and Councillor Steck are both on leave of absence, and Councillor Turner is an apology. The rest of us are here. I have received one declaration of interest from Councillor Ramesh on item 10.4.1. Certainly a doctor there, Councillor Ramesh. I'm not going to be able to read your reasons, but it is an impartial interest, so he will be staying in the room for that item. Okay, so councillors, moving our way through the agenda, we'll just work our way through the items, jumping all the way down, minute taker, to 10.2.1, I think will be the first one we deal with. It's the Bunbury Regional Theatre Incorporated board members. Any questions on this? All good? I did forget to mention we do have two deputations, councillors. Being a briefing sessions, I've approved those two, and when we get to their items, we'll invite them up. 10.3.1 is the financial management report. Any questions on this? All good, thank you. 10.3.2, any questions? Thank you. 10.4.1 is one of our deputations. Gary, is this both of you doing it? Who's doing this presentation? Both? Just Gary? Thanks, Gary. Come and join us, please, Mr. Fitzgerald. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, councillors. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of Joanne and Sashin in regards to the Joe's Curry House, which I'm sure everyone's probably familiar with in Bunbury. I do have some photos that if we could just bring up. I just want to talk to a couple of these graphics as we go through the presentation, please. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity. Councillors, basically, we understand the position that the staff are in, but we are here tonight and I am speaking against the recommendation. So I would like to bring up some items which I think are not in the report, which we believe has some bearing on your consideration. But in essence, councillors, beg your pardon, as I said, while we understand staff's position, we think that there's an ability for you to apply discretion under clause 43 under the scheme, which allows for minor variations, which we believe this ultimately is. So councillors, if we can just go to the next slide, obviously that's a bit of the streetscape as you'll see it. And as you'll see, the recommendation which are in your report has essentially three items which relate to a lack of parking bays and essentially impact on adjoining landowners in effect by two of the items. If we can just go to the next slide, please. So what I'd like to point out, councillors, is that the key to this issue is car parking on site. And that graphic there, I think, is really important because what's not in the report, which has come about as of very recently, is that the adjoining landowner, the site to the north, the top of the building, the subject building, the adjoining landowner there, Mr. Mark Lewis, is now in agreement with a reciprocal parking arrangement for the sites. So in essence, councillors, there is 15 car parking bays on that site. The scheme provisions are 10 car parking bays. So there is a surplus of car parking bays. Yes, immediately, there is an issue in regards to compliance with the standard in regards to dimensioning. But if we can just go on to the next slide, please. There's a couple of slides here. That's 2002, and if you can go on to the next one, that's 2020. Or 2010, beg your pardon. So my point for bringing these slides up, councillors, is that this is not something that hasn't been operating for a very long time and very successfully. So the parking arrangements that are there, which are unusual, which is not uncommon to lots of older areas in Bunbury, function. So they work very well as they are. And we have a total now of 15 bays on site to service those businesses. Important consideration with that is also the hours of operation of those two businesses. One will be primarily business hours, the others will be primarily after business hours. So there's clearly this relationship between this business and probably others, but formally between these two businesses, which allows for this parking arrangement to occur. If we can go on to the next slide, please. So I don't think I need to speak in great detail about concerns that I think the community have with, for example, this building, unfortunately. And if we can go on to the next slide, if we look at it from a streetscape and on to the next one, unfortunately, within the same area, there's a number of buildings that are empty. And I don't think it's a surprise to anyone when I say the area needs something to revitalise it. It needs gentrification. And what Joe's Curry House, what Sachin and Joanne are introducing there is exactly what this is about. It's about bringing vitality to the area. It's bringing something in there that creates a business, creates activity, brings people there, then the antisocial behaviour stops, and it creates further investment. While we're talking about antisocial behaviour, I haven't got the photo up there, but Mr. John Banks, who owns the building, in speaking to him this morning, he was explaining to me about the antisocial behaviour that he's had to counteract since 2023, when that building was vacant from the current tenants. So it's been, if you like, councillors, on the market a long time and probably stop on the market a long time. But Mr. Banks has invested on a regular basis graffiti removal because of antisocial behaviour. And it's just, and other things such as having to get electricians where power's been cut into existing electrical wiring illegally. The point I'm making is about what's happening there at the moment. So on one hand, we have hopefully the ability to approve a development which will bring gentrification, vitality, new business to the area. Alternatively, we sort of have the same old, and basically the area really needs that vibrancy, and what our client proposes to put there will bring exactly that. If we can go on to the next slide, please. Concern from adjoining residents, we totally appreciate, and so does our clients, the need to not impact anybody. And this is a site at the rear, if you can sort of just orientate yourselves to that. This photo is taken, importantly, on the day of the last football match at 1 o'clock in the day. Now, my sort of looking around the area at the time was just about every car parking bay elsewhere was taken up. This one wasn't. That may have been an unusual day, but certainly our observations are that this car park is not full a lot of the time. However, we have the parking bays on site, and we certainly don't want to impact any other landowner. And the other important point that I'd make when looking at that photo with a very large car park area, again, is an acknowledgement of, even if it was, notwithstanding again, and I'll keep repeating that, the 15 bays, the hours of operation are completely different. So when we're looking at the area generally, we know we can't rely on other landowners' car parking, but if you look at a ped shed distance from where this is, there's a significant amount of parking for the community and for everybody in the area. But again, we've got the 15 bays on site. If we can just go on, please. Even if it was an issue, and going back to the executive recommendation, which is not impacting on adjoining land, there are mechanisms to control that. This is a photo from the back of my office this afternoon where I went, there's a really effective way that you can stop people parking in your car parking bay if that was going to be the case. You can manage it such as this. So notwithstanding the 15 bays that we're providing on site, even if there was to be some potential impact, it can be managed in other ways. But we don't see that there will be an impact in any way whatsoever. And as I said, the hours of operation, I think, are vitally important in noting the hours that a restaurant operates as opposed to other hours of operation for other businesses. If we can just go on to the next slide. So, councillors, really, what I wanted to just point out here is very clearly you have the discretion to approve and make a minor variation to the executive recommendation. So the executive recommendation is putting to you, no, the development shouldn't be approved because there's not enough car parking bays. We're saying yes, we are now adding the parking bays because of the adjoining landowner's Mark's agreement, and we have the 15 bays. What we're asking you to consider under this provision is the ability the requirement just to vary the car parking dimensional requirements, for want of a better description, noting that this has operated for a long period of time and will continue to operate successfully. No, it doesn't comply 100% to those requirements, but the parking is there. And while even without that parking, to be quite honest with you, as the proposal that's presented to council with the 2 bays on site, we still would have argued that this is a very worthwhile development for the area. And the fact that you might not have the parking, the argument would have been something along the lines of the gentrification of the area, the vibrancy brought to the area, the investment that it creates now and in the future would be well worthwhile council applying discretion on car parking. But again, we're just asking for a discretion on the dimensions of the car parking bays, and we'd respectfully put to you that you amend your recommendation to approve the development, subject to the proponent providing a suitable legal agreement to confirm a reciprocal arrangement for parking, and confirming that the existing 15 car parking bays on the 2 sites would service the operations for Joe's Curry House. So, councillors, I don't think I need to labour it too much more than that, because it's a fairly simple request that we're making. It's a great business, everyone knows it. It'll gentrify the area, and I think it'll just be a great opportunity to invest in that part of Bunbury. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak. Happy to take any questions if you'd like, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Gary. Not normally part of this process, but I'm sure they can reach out if we need to from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Questions for our elected members? Councillor Kozisek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just wondering if for next week's meeting we could actually have an alternative to the executive recommendation with the suggestions from Mr Fitzgerald regarding the clause 43, and if we could have an alternative somehow worded appropriately for next week, please.
Yeah, and probably just following on that, CEO, while you answer or asking for planning staff advice, what would that change around some of those comments that Mr Fitzgerald was just outlined around some of those changes with the agreement? Is that something that the staff could come up with, or at least come up with an alternative?
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor. And I think as Mr Fitzgerald outlined tonight, the reciprocal parking arrangement that he's just outlined wasn't considered in this report, because that's only just been brought to the attention, I think, and so obviously the report's been prepared in line with the current planning regulations, and there is currently a parking shortfall of 8. If the intent from elected members is for us to assess the reciprocal parking arrangements and perhaps prepare an alternative, then we can certainly look to do that, Mayor.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If the report is changed with the update we've just received, would this be able to be approved by the staff anyway? Because the reason it's coming to us is because there was no reciprocal rights. What's the point in bringing it back to council at this time if this can be dealt with, I guess, at an officer level?
CEO.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Andrew, given that it has already been out to advertising and it has got, the objections, albeit from the same, then it would still be worthwhile for that to come back to council. But let's make that assessment based on the reciprocal parking that's been offered, and then we can provide some further advice.
Follow up, Councillor Andrew.
Thank you. I guess, so what would, if the reciprocal rights, so the reason in the officer's report was it's obviously the parking arrangements, if that's sorted before the next meeting, do we expect the executive recommendation itself to be changed? Or would you imagine that the recommendation stays the same with an alternate?
CEO.
So thank you. At this stage, probably I would expect it to stay the same, but with an alternative. Obviously, we've written this report at the time and have now got further information, but I'll get further advice on that.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you. I guess if it just comes to that, is it worth taking this item off the agenda for a round and bringing it back at the appropriate time once, because even the report itself, I think from TCON, probably needs to be updated with this information, and bringing it back with the appropriate recommendation if it's all signed off on.
Let's see if we can get that conversation happening during this week before rushing to take it off, I think, Councillor Andrew, and we'll get some advice, some written advice from the staff, whether or not they want to change their recommendation or provide the alternative that CEO has just provided. Otherwise, you can move to defer. You can move to that option next week, Councillor Andrew. Councillor Deputy Mayor.
Probably just asking the same question in a different way, Mr Mayor. For the purpose of planning, is there ability to take into account the swapping of parking bays with neighbouring properties? Is that allowed through the Act?
CEO.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you, Mayor. Yes, that is allowed. So reciprocal parking arrangements are used quite frequently where there is a parking shortfall and there is an agreement between adjoining landowners to pick up that shortfall.
All good. Thank you. Thanks, councillors. Item 10.4.2 is another planning a matter. We do have Tony's here. Thank you, Tony. Come and join us. You're away.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors, for the opportunity to present our position in relation to the amendment to the Chilbrook Structure Plan. I'd like to point out I represent Kings Lane and Kings Lane Development WA, which are the two major landowners, have been working over the last 18 months to try and progress the amendment to the structure plan. There is an approved structure plan in place right now, and we in fact could implement the current structure plan if that was the case. But the objective around the proposal you have before you is that we wanted to make the structure plan more contemporary. As you note, the current one was approved in 2014. Planning framework has changed, lot sizes, configuration, that's all changed. So we wanted to make it more contemporary. Also wanted to reflect the road changes that have been made in that area, into particularly around the Bore. We thought it would be a relatively simple process, and the structure plan we arrived at, when you compare the current structure plan with the proposed structure plan, there's not much difference. So, but having said that, we did actually, both Development WA and Kings Lane supported the structure plan that was advertised, and our support for the structure plan remains unchanged. What we do have some difficulty with is a number of the suggested modifications that the council's being asked to endorse. And the primary reason for that is that you currently have before you over 600 pages of technical documents supporting the structure plan. My concern is that there is a suggestion that some of those approved documents need to be updated, and that involves external agencies, and the consequence of all of that is that we'll be sitting here for another probably 12, 18 months before we can actually do anything on this area. I would also like to sort of point out to the council, there's a couple of inaccuracies in the report. The summary of the proposal talks about the residential lot yield being increased from 600 odd lots to 800 odd lots. Well, that's technically in terms of the lots, that's correct, but the previous structure plan, or the approved structure plan, had a lot yield or dwelling yield of nearly 1,200 lots, because that recognised there was some aged person sites. So what we are proposing under the current structure plan is in fact a reduction of 878. So there's no increase in lots. It's actually a reduction, and that reflects market conditions. Probably 10 years ago, the lots would have been smaller. I think it reflects a different demographic in the area. The other point I'd like to raise is around public open space, and there's a lot of detail presented to the council on this. The report actually refers to a reduction in open space. Now, that's not correct. The current structure plan provides local open space of 13%. The proposed structure plan provides a similar amount, 13%, and as you probably know from dealing with subdivision applications, the normal provision is 10%, and we're providing 13%. In addition to that, there's 25 hectares of regional open space that needs to be provided, and that's free of cost. So in terms of this area, over 36% is to be provided for open space, local open space and regional open space, and you have a recommendation before you that suggests we should be providing more, which is just inequitable given that the amount of open space that's to be provided. Part of the rationale is that some of the local open space is restricted. It is restricted in the sense it's got trees on it, but that doesn't prevent it being well used by the community. And most areas throughout WA now, it's open space is not simply cleared and grass. There's an objective to retain trees, to provide playground equipment, footpaths. All those things can be provided. So the suggestion that the open space is somehow not usable or it's wetland or something like that is incorrect. So there's great opportunities for the local open space that's been designated to be utilised. So as I said, we support the recommendation and we would like this matter to progress because obviously there is still a long process with the WA Planning Commission to get there, but we do have difficulties with a number of the recommendations because, as I said, it will simply slow the process and, in our view, without good reason. We'd still like to work with the officers, and I must say we have been working well. There's probably a difference of opinion in terms of the next step forward, but Mr Mayor, I'd close it at that, and happy to respond to questions.
Sure. Thank you very much, Tony. Yeah, not an opportunity to really take questions from elected members, but I'm sure you're going to continue listening. So there might be a few questions here which you might be able to provide some guidance to in the follow-up potentially. But thank you for your deputation, and I'll pass to elected members for any questions. Councillor Quain.
Thank you, Mayor. I've emailed through some questions to the staff, so it'd be nice if you could respond and have those answers tabled. Thank you.
Sure. Do you want to read your questions and we can take them as read, Councillor Quain? I haven't seen them, but if you want them in the public forum. What's that? Oh, I've just heard they're very detailed. Do you have a summary on that? But I understand that they might be very detailed, Councillor Quain, but do you have a sort of summarised position that you might want to ask?
It's regarding bus stop locations. I believe PTA is involved with that, so I was interested in the timeline and the relevance of the cycleway, the full length of Washington Avenue, and the increase to unrestricted public open space, same amount provided as previously approved structured plan. Some of the areas officers consider as restricted could be considered as unrestricted. Is this possible? Is there a policy that requires notification regarding airport noise?
Cool. I think we'll taken on notice, Councillor Quain, and second thoughts. But yeah, they will be noted and obviously responded to, and you can utilise those next week during debate or how you feel. Other questions, elected Councillor Kozak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just have a query. Something Tony didn't touch on was the reduction in the school zone from 4 hectares to 3.75. And I note that was one of the big issues here. I wonder if we have any clarification on that, please.
Yeah, I might just spin a take. I just want to bring the executive recommendation, just scrolling down a little bit. I know there was something in there which was talking about working with the department, but I might ask the CEO if there's a comment or a response to that.
Thank you, Mayor. Are you happy, Mayor, if I just make some general comments before we perhaps deal with some of the specifics? Firstly, Tony, thank you, and thank you for your input. As I've been working through this, I think there's a few things that that I want to just to let elected members know. And we've got Alice Baldock and we've got Phil Diamond here who can speak to more of the technical detail from our planning department. First of all, very supportive of this development, and people have heard me talk about this development in terms of its importance to the city and the future growth of the city and one of our key development sites. So I don't think we have any argument here. This application will ultimately be determined by the WA Planning Commission. So they are the planning authority, and what we've done and what we're required to do is to make our assessment against the state planning policies and our local planning policy. So we're required to do that in referring this to the WAPC for a decision. They will expect the city to have done its assessment against all of the state and planning policies. WAPC, there is a schedule of modifications, and that's the form that WAPC requires. So there is a form of modifications, and I know Mr. Arias has raised some of those, and there is some things that we probably can discuss between now and next week. The WA Planning Commission will look at our assessment and look at those modifications, and they can accept them or not accept them, and that they are our assessment against the state and local planning policies. As we move through that, the applicants will have an opportunity to meet with the Department of Planning and to go through some of those things. Some of the recommendations are around, or some of the modifications relate to our assessment against those state and local planning policies. Some of them, as Councillor Kozsek is raising, are those discussions that need to happen with education around the size of the school site and the size of the playing ovals and the associated issues. Mr. Arias is right that the public open space is actually increased, and I think the table that we've got in the report will be modified. You'll see that next week, but there is a slight increase. That said, there is some issues around Department of Education site that the recommendation seeks to pick up, that we support this, but there needs to be further discussions. We believe that it's easier for the state government departments, WA Planning Commission, Department of Planning, to have those discussions with their state agencies to resolve those issues. There's equally some recommendations to do with other matters, water, and also with main roads that need to be resolved. Highly supportive of this, and I get the frustration and how long this is taking, and we certainly don't want this to take much longer. We're certainly very happy, and the planning staff are really happy to work with Mr. Arias and the applicants to see if we can fine-tune some of those modifications. But ultimately what we want to do is get this into the WA Planning Commission's hands so that they can ultimately determine this matter. We believe the assessment is the assessment we have to do under our requirements, and in fact the WA Planning Commission can request us to do that in dealing with any of these submissions. So unless there may be some other specific questions, as I said, I do have both Alice and Philip here who may be able to answer some more of those technical questions. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just have clarification on point 2 of the recommendation about the proposed intersection amendment at Bustle Highway? What precisely does that mean? Because I've looked at the plan and I can't see where this development is joining Bustle Highway. So what's that about, please?
CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I might ask Alice Baldock to answer that question, our Team Leader of Planning.
Thank you, and through the Mayor. So, Councillor Smith, basically under the current approved structure plan, what it is, the structure plan shows a full access intersection onto Bustle Highway, so traffic light system. And through this amendment, I guess acknowledging the the changes to the road network with Bunbury Outer Ring Road. The amendment has now proposed a left-in, left-out access onto Bustle Highway, similar to what is being installed in Dalyellum at the moment. So they've actually lowered the intensity of their access design. That was referred through to Main Roads through the referral process, and at that point, Main Roads has actually objected to any access being granted onto Bustle Highway, despite there being an approved structure plan that allows a full access intersection currently. So the city, I guess, does not agree with Main Roads' comments in relation to that, and as such, we've recommended that that's a matter that the WAPC resolves with Main Roads at that higher level.
Further questions? Sia?
Thank you, Mayor. So we're, as I said, we're happy to work with Mr Arias over the coming week, and if there's additional information to be provided to elected members, we'll do so in time for that to be considered before next council meeting.
Thank you. I do believe that brings us to a close. It does. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, members of the public, for joining. Thank you, staff and elected members. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.